Well, we're 1 minute past, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So if Jonathan wants to bring up the slide deck.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi, Nora.
Hi, Nora.
Hi, Yvonne.
All right, everyone could just go ahead and mute themselves. We'll get started here. Well, hello to everyone. I'm so happy to see so many familiar faces, but welcome to our Lunch and Learn workshop on internationalizing the curriculum. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tammy Rosner and I'm the Director of International Education at the System Office. Joining me today are Dr. Eric Spears, Associate Professor of Geography and Chair of International Education at Columbus State University, Dr. Tony Lemieux, Founding Co-Director, Atlanta Global Studies Center and Professor of Communication at Georgia State University, and Dr. Nanette Commander, Virtual Exchange Coordinator and Professor Emerita, also at Georgia State. Next slide, please. Okay, for our agenda today, we plan to talk first about what internationalizing the curriculum is. Then Eric will share his work with the American Democracy Project, including a resource that we can all use to introduce global learning components into our courses. And then Tony and Nanette will educate us on international virtual exchange and the work that GSU is doing to utilize it as part of their campus internationalization work. Next slide. So first, let's talk about what internationalization of the curriculum is. Internationalization of the curriculum is just one component of a broader plan to internationalize a campus. Just like international student mobility on its own can't internationalize your campus, neither will just internationalizing the curriculum. The American Council on Education has these two great visuals to show us how international student mobility and internationalizing the curriculum fits into a bigger internationalization effort a university may undertake. ACE defines comprehensive internationalization as a strategic coordinated framework that integrates policies, programs, initiatives, and individuals to make colleges and universities more globally oriented and internationally connected. In order to foster sustainable and just global engagement, the comprehensive internationalization model embraces an organizational growth mindset. It frames internationalization as an ongoing process rather than a static goal. And you can see the quote from Betty Leask, whose Internationalizing the Curriculum publication is an important work to read. And I have a link to her work on our resource slide at the end. I really recommend that you look at it if you're, well, as you will be more interested in this as we finish the presentation. Next slide, please. So how does comprehensive internationalization, including internationalization of the curriculum, fit into the USG strategic plan? If you review the USG strategic plan 2024, you'll see that at goal 3, which concerns economic competitiveness, our campuses have a goal to develop 21st century skills within our students, such as being able to work in diverse multidisciplinary teams. At goal 4, we have set a metric which looks to greatly increase student enrollment in experiential learning courses like study abroad and international virtual exchange by 2024. If we look at the USG data, we see that currently through international student mobility alone, we are reaching only 2.6% of our population via study abroad. Also, international students make up only 4.5% of the total USG student body. That's a little over 14,000 out of over 300,000 USG students. And as you probably know, most of those international students are concentrated at Tech, UGA, and Georgia State. So as I referenced earlier in the presentation, mobility alone can't internationalize our campuses. Also, I think we have all realized how fragile international student mobility is to uncontrollable factors as we enter our second semester with little to no study abroad, our second summer semester with little to no study abroad due to COVID-19. Therefore, Your campus may want to consider other avenues for providing global educational opportunities to your students. Internationalizing the curriculum would add another component towards comprehensive internationalization and reach many more students in an accessible way. I also include this pie chart to show that about 15% of our campuses don't address any type of internationalization through strategic planning. And also only 10 of our institutions, which is the 38%, have a specific plan for campus internationalization. Next slide, please. So finally, before I turn it over to Eric, I want to introduce to you a new way to consider the purpose for internationalizing the curriculum or even comprehensive internationalization. When thinking of how to realize goals 3 and 4 of the strategic plan, we could consider options that tie together campus internationalization and career readiness. So is anyone here other than Michelle familiar with the terms I-shaped and T-shaped professionals? I can't see everybody. I'm going to assume most people are saying no, but if you do know about it, indulge me while I talk about it just a minute. So colleges and universities are very good at creating I-shaped professionals, those with deep discipline knowledge as seen in the vertical visual. But in order to create T-shaped professionals, we need to add another dimension to our students' learning. A T-shaped professional is defined by Dr. Laura Vieira as someone who possesses deep disciplinary specialization and breadth across several areas that equip them to engage in deep problem solving in their discipline, culture, and our system, and communicate and collaborate using skills that cross many areas. Students with these traits are the types of graduates that employers are looking to hire. So beyond creating graduates with deep discipline knowledge that we are already good at doing, we need to also concentrate on teamwork, resilience, global thinking, curiosity, the horizontal part of the T. As an international educator, I see the path to creating these types of graduates easily attainable through internationalization. Through internationalization, our students can gain all the personal benefits that international student mobility and an internationalized curriculum can provide, as well as all the professional. So I have definitions on this slide for what wicked problems are and what VUCA means. But think about these and where we are today in our pandemic world. T-shaped professionals with interdisciplinary and global views can create new solutions to wicked problems and are better prepared to function in a VUCA context, which makes them more employable. And as I said earlier, I think this is easily accomplished through international education efforts. So as you listen to our presentations today, consider this new framing of why internationalization of your curriculum is important. So thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Eric. Next slide.
Greetings, everyone. It's really nice to be here. Again, I'm Eric Spears. I'm with Columbus State University, and I oversee the Center for Global Engagement, but I also am faculty within the College of Letters and Science. And I want to talk to you in particular about a specific project that we are implementing this year, but in reality will carry out the course delivery in the upcoming academic year. And it's using an open source program called World 101. If we could go to the next slide, please. So World 101 is a curriculum that is available to any institution in this country that wants to integrate, or really the way I like to word it, infuse the curriculum with global learning opportunities. Back in the summer of 2020, Columbus State was invited to be a part of a national cohort of institutions with the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, or ASCU's, American Democracy Project. And while the American Democracy Project, or commonly known as the ADP, is a well-known program that focuses on current events and other forms related to American democracy, the ADP extended out a new opportunity to partner with the Council on Foreign Relations in New York City, which is one of the paramount think tanks of international research to create a curriculum called World 101. And this program is designed to help institutions find creative and interesting ways of building in global civic literacy into its curriculum and other co-curricular opportunities. Presently, and by, I think, coincidence, there are 4 USG institutions that are part of this World 101 program. Last year, the last academic year, 2019 to 2020, Georgia College over in Milledgeville, through Steve Elliott Gower in political science, piloted a World 101 on their campus. Presently, within the current cohort of campuses across the country, the USG has 3 different institutions represented. We have, and actually at 3 different scales of university activity. We have the University of West Georgia as a comprehensive institution. We have Columbus State as a state university, and also Gordon State College, all a part of the same cohort, looking at ways of using this curriculum that I'm about to show you in an effort to not just internationalize the curriculum, but as Tammy indicated earlier, to add the T dimension to learning and professional development. Before I go into what Columbus State is actually doing, I just want to give a quick update on behalf of Gordon State College and also West Georgia with the ways they're approaching this project. So at Gordon State College, Christy Flatt, who is the representative or the senior international officer for that campus, explained to me in an email that the globalization of the curriculum and study abroad is a new but growing priority for Gordon State College. The ADP project with World 101 has narrowed our focus and efforts on increasing global civic literacy through incorporating the World 101 materials into courses and also participation in a domestic virtual exchange. And so that's kind of a parallel, opportunity to what you'll hear later on from our colleagues at Georgia State. She goes on to write that a domestic virtual exchange actually has already occurred between Gordon's psychology and sociology classes, as well as English composition classes, with those of York College and Jamaica, New York. Students were required to interview other students and compare their experiences and lives. The project increased student awareness of themselves as a global citizen and encouraged the development of communication skills. So along with Dr. Flatt, Drs. Baskin and Traylor of Gordon State College are piloting this project. Over at West Georgia, we have 2 principal individuals who are leading the World 101 effort. They are Tijan Drama and Kathy Barrett, both of political science. And they are going to use the World 101 curriculum in both first-year seminar and Introduction to American Government courses beginning in the fall of 21. After successful completion of the fall semester, they plan to draw up their experiences, both successes and some of the shortcomings, to build partnerships and then to develop more campus buy-in so that by the following academic year, World 101 as a internationalizing effort can be adopted more broadly. They will also do follow-up assessment to compare course sections that have done a World 101 curriculum with those students who have not done World 101 curriculum. So those are 2 of our present cohort members in the USG thinking of ways to internationalize the curriculum. Now, my focus is going to be much more specific as an example of what we're doing at Columbus State University. And if we could go on to the next slide, please, I'll introduce a little more of what World 101 is and how we aim to infuse our curriculum with it. As I stated before, World 101, offered through the Council on Foreign Relations, is a free and open source curriculum resource that can be adopted by anyone. You do not have to be in this ADP project cohort to use the World 101. The reason we're in the cohort, though, is to have a group of peer support and a community of different kinds of institutions across the country so we can compare notes. And we're going to end up having a global summit later in the summer where we'll actually share resources with how we're doing using this curriculum in a variety of ways so that we can adopt and share best practices and so forth. But World 101, in terms of its curriculum structure, is an approachable resource that doesn't presume that you have to have had, an introductory course to international relations to already understand it, or that you have to be specifically a political science or an international affairs major to take part of this. It is designed and intentionally so to be accessible from a wide variety of disciplines, both for students and for faculty members who may want to include elements of this curriculum into their computer science classes, or to a math class, or to a public health class. The curriculum is broken down into major components. As you see here from the screenshot of their landing page, you can go into 12 different modules that focus on global era issues. And those issues include everything from globalization and how it works or sometimes doesn't work, to climate change, to migration, and other aspects of global health. They also break down the world in terms of regions. So if you're also a geographer like me and you have a world regional geography course, which is a core requirement in the USG, we have 6 modules that can be integrated into an existing class. They also have another thing called How the World Works and Sometimes Doesn't, which kind of brings students into the fray of the gray between anything that's white or black on issues of international conflict, whether that's war, whether that's cultural conflict, and so forth. So there's a lot of focus on how international organizations and multilateralism play a role in shaping and responding to a complicated world. And they're also now adding in historical context. So there's one module that was actually launched just this week so that you can bring in some historical analysis into contemporary understandings of the 21st century world. All this to having been said is that within each of these modules, you have simulation exercises, you have video links, you have accessible reading materials that are not highfalutin academic talk or speak, that they're actually approachable, oftentimes written by journalists or other analysts who kind of explain the world in a very approachable way. And for me here at Columbus State University and with my colleagues, it is our hope that this curriculum can be used in our first year seminar experience or what we call the Perspectives program. So if we can go to the next slide, please. We have a set of courses that will use this open set curriculum that will target freshman students to think about these different issues or within those modules or boxes that I just showed you. The beautiful thing about this project is that within any kind of freshman seminar experience, you often have faculty from a variety of different disciplinary backgrounds jumping into the freshman courses to teach either a 1 or 2 credit hour option. And that's why this program is attractive, because I have a colleague in accounting who wants to use this program to talk about fintech and look at world financial issues, but in a very approachable way to a group of students who may not even end up being either accounting or fintech majors, but just to expose them to one aspect of the world. I have another colleague who's much more interested in sustainability issues coming out of the social sciences. And she wants to use this course not only in an introductory and interdisciplinary way to have our students think about more of how 21st century sustainability is currently experienced, but what it could look or feel like in the future. She wants to actually take this course into a study abroad format once we're back into full travel. We can go to the next module too. Sorry, the next slide. And what I really just want to highlight here is that this entire curriculum is so flexible. It's completely adaptable. If we can go to the next slide. So here are the breakdown of the topics that this curriculum actually looks at. We have the topics of globalization, terrorism, nuclear proliferation, climate change, migration, cybersecurity, and onward. So you can see very clearly that this type of open source material can be approached from a variety of angles with a lot of creativity, bringing in very disciplinary thoughts and practices to groups of students who would either be maybe in that narrow part of the T model, going narrow and deep within their own current subject, so it can actually highlight or accentuate what they're learning. Or in the case with Columbus State University, looking at the top bar, the T, with understanding how we can broaden that out and introduce them to new things that they may have never thought of before. Next slide, please. So our rationale at Columbus State University is to use this curriculum to quote unquote democratize global learning and make international education accessible for all students. As Tammy's presentation indicated, there is only a small fraction of our students who actually do study abroad. 4.5%, I think, was the study abroad rate. And when you think about study abroad in its most basic form and design, and as much as we are successful at encouraging first generation, non-traditional, and other underrepresented students to do study abroad, it does require resources. It does require the time and flexibility to travel abroad. It does require an investment of money. And not every student has that access available to them, which means we would be cutting them off from learning about the world and giving them the critical transferable skills that you're supposed to get through a liberal arts education. In terms of global thinking as well, and their civic literacy with that, we would be bypassing them completely. So the idea is to kind of make this approachable and accessible and equitable for all of our students, no matter what major they're in or what kind of background they're coming from as they come to CSU as a freshman student. Next slide, please. So we have, 3 different course modalities that we can use for this World 101 curriculum at Columbus State. We can offer it as a face-to-face, on-campus traditional course. We can also do it as an online course. This Maymester, I'm going to pilot the World 101 curriculum with a virtual study abroad with a program that's called Europe at the Crossroads. And then we can also do it in a much more traditional study abroad framework if that's what you would like to do. That's what one of my colleagues would like to do in the UK this coming January term. We have a J term at Columbus State. Next slide, please. So the 2 freshman classes that we're using for these 3 modalities include Perspectives 1506, which is a 1 credit hour course, or another option would be to do a 2 credit version of the Perspectives course called 1507. Both courses are very similar in design and they're open to creativity. But at the end of each of these courses, and with whichever approach that you take within a World 101 curriculum, there is a required and integrated problem-based learning exercise that will help students not just kind of take active learning to a new level, but really give them ownership, agency with how they understand this global material. So it's not a passive environment, but they actually have to bring something to the table. And they most likely will be doing it in team-based learning frameworks. So they're not just doing it on their own, but they actually, using that top bar of the T, they're having to use communication skills, problem-solving skills, and come up with resolutions and ideas that will address some of these critical issues of the 21st century. Next slide, please. So this team-based or project-based learning will be an important aspect of how they synthesize any of the topics or materials they may actually read in World 101. And we'll be using some of our internal assessment with this by using the AAC&U LEAP Global Value Rubric, which if you go to the next slide, there is just an example of what that rubric looks like. Oh, sorry, I have another slide. Here's the virtual study abroad that I'll be doing. I apologize, I had that out of order when I put it together, but if we can go on to the next slide. Here is the Global Learning Value Rubric. And most likely with my students and my colleagues working with freshman students, we're going to be looking at benchmarks within 1 or 2 of these categories. But this gives us a framework of trying to, at least initially, assess where the global civic literacy development occurs throughout not just the Perspectives course, but then maybe later on, even connecting into other opportunities at CSU that could further develop their global self-awareness, perspective taking, diversity, and so forth, and how they understand the global system or the international order. In addition to this value rubric, like West Georgia, we would like to do a pre-assessment and a post-assessment after they do a perspectives course. Try to measure where they're using an established rubric or an instrument that would measure where they fall in and check with this particular value rubric. But then after they do the course, test it again to see what kind of development that they may have had within that semester or term that they do this course. So it's, for us, this is just one aspect of internationalization at Columbus State. We have other forms of internationalization through a co-curricular community called the International Learning Community. We have a pretty robust study abroad program that's just gearing up, ready to go again. And we're slowly integrating virtual opportunities, which will be one of the topics that you hear about from Nanette. But we find that building this global capacity, this learning capacity at the freshman level is a crucial foundation for further maturation and development down the road. I think that might be my last slide. Yes, so I'll take questions at the end, right, Tammy? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, at the very end, I'll read the questions that have come through the chat and we'll take questions from the floor. Thank you.
Well, I'm grateful to be here. My name's Tony Lemieux. I am the founding co-director of the Atlanta Global Studies Center and professor of communication at Georgia State. As Tammy mentioned, I'm joined by my colleague, Nanette Commander. And we're going to talk a little bit about international virtual exchange at a relatively high level, and with our discussion, we'll be able to facilitate some more interaction on that. So next slide, please. One of the things that we're going to do is walk through a quick conversation about the definitions and benefits, different formats, and where to get started. Because I think one of the things as we talk about, this in theory as well, how do you put it into practice and what do you work with? So we'll talk about some examples and then funded versus non-funded activities, how you assess that and moving forward. So next slide, please. So the first sort of thing to really get out there is what virtual exchange is. It's a pretty broadly defined, broadly construed term. It's an umbrella essentially for different forms of online international intercultural exchange. It can involve different kinds of modalities in terms of, is it a course, a whole course? Is it a portion of a course? Is it a little subsection? I'll talk a little bit about that in some detail, but there's different ways you might hear this concept talked about. Collaborative online international learning, or COIL, is a model, and that's the model that I first started my experience with virtual exchange with when I was in the State University of New York system, and it's really grown from there. But there have been telecollaboration or online exchanges or telecollaboration. Any sort of activity that brings global teams together is in this space. But why it's important to us is that it really does represent what we think about as a high impact practice. It's been really widely implemented, evaluated, tested at this point. It really does have, I think, a lot of empirical support as a concept now. And it really does bring together, the best of our potential, the affordances that we have using the online platforms and tools and technologies, and how you can incorporate that then in a notion of hybrid classes or in the context of using it to augment and supplement your face-to-face learning. For me, the sort of online augmentation of the face-to-face was where it got started. And one of the things that I really want to make a critical point about, and this is really important here, a lot of the sort of barriers or perceived barriers or hurdles to collaborative online international learning or international virtual exchange was that sense of, well, I'm not doing that much online. Well, we know this past year, that no longer really holds for pretty much any of us. So one of the big sort of, points of contention has effectively been addressed by necessity, but also a little bit more by default. So that really gives us, I think, a good common ground. We see where online, supplementing the curriculum and doing things wholly online in some instances can really be effective. This is one of those places. Next slide, please. The benefits of virtual exchange are significant and they are many. And this is, I think, really where we can connect in, system-wide strategic goals and priorities. And I think we've, Tammy's mentioned this, and Eric talked about this as well, but really that notion of doing things that create portable skills, strong backgrounds, things that are going to serve students well throughout their academic experience and well beyond into their careers. So what it does is it gives students the opportunity to really build that sense of global competence. They become engaged, they work collaborative, they work across cultures, sometimes across languages, across time zones. They have to learn how to work together. They have to learn how to navigate the appropriate technologies. So there is this notion of understanding that develops, cross-cultural understanding. There are professional skills. How do you manage, projects? How do you edit each other's work? That was actually a deep, sort of like a personal revelation in my own sort of journey with virtual exchange, when I had students doing a shared wiki project, for instance, and turns out it's a little bit tricky to go in and edit something that somebody else wrote. There were, different levels of comfort with that. So as an example, that was something then we had to teach to. And then people now, who were involved came out with that as a skill set. So that, I think, is just, but one example of the professional skills it involves. But you're presenting, you're collaborating, you're communicating. All of those things are really core skills that, again, we know that employers are looking for. We know that there's the sort of sense of global and cultural competence. But what I really want to emphasize here is the benefits of virtual exchange, even though we're talking about internationalizing the curriculum, really extend far beyond that and will be sort of, I think, very much a set of evergreen skills that we see our students get. Next slide, please. For faculty, now this is really one of the things where, when we're talking about where the rubber meets the road in implementation, is really conveying the benefits to faculty. One of the things that this does is it allows people to really engage and enrich their courses, their experience. Frankly, it's fun. You're working with a collaborator and you're putting together modules and lessons and topics. But you also then, can bring in more perspectives into your teaching. So from a pedagogical perspective, it's highly enriching. It also helps to build and create international collaborations and teams that extend to research for those who are more active in the sort of research space. And that was really something, right now, I'll give you an example. I started my collaboration with Dublin City University back around 2009. Next week or so, we're submitting a multi-million dollar grant together to the UK government through a bunch of collaborators and a network that we've built over that sort of ensuing time period. So it results sometimes in really wonderful ongoing relationships. So, beyond the immediate benefit of the course itself for the students, for pedagogical innovation, it does create these, I think, really compelling set of professional development opportunities. And if my example, anecdotal as it is serves any purpose, it really shows that, this can really balloon and blossom into something that really is sustainable and great and pays it dividends over many years. More importantly, though, I think what it does for faculty is it gives a way to really integrate with relative, and I don't want to say it's incredibly easy, but it's fairly easy in the sense that it is doable to bring that global perspective into your curriculum. You develop that, you build it into your courses, and certainly in terms of pedagogical effort, innovation, impact, these are all things that from a faculty perspective really do factor into merit ratings and performance evaluations, and really should. This is a way for us to recognize that. For us at Georgia State, it also dovetails very closely with integrating work into the college to career program, so that we are talking about those sort of global competencies and dimensions. And here, people now are able to connect their work very directly, very deliberately and intentionally to university and to USG system-wide priorities. So it really does create a win-win platform. Next slide, please. The thing that I think is critical here is to note that it's a truly and intentionally collaborative approach. That is something that is imbued throughout the spirit, thinking about the courses, developing the partnerships. But what we've been endeavoring to do, and this is an offer as much as anything, through the Atlanta Global Studies Center and through our partnership with the University System of Georgia, and we've been working with colleagues at Clemson University and more broadly, to really develop what we call SERVE, or this Southeast Regional Virtual Exchange Consortium. Now, why is that important? Because it allows us to hit scale with training, with developing partnerships. Some institutions may have a Rolodex full of international partners, and others may say, that's the hard part for me. Well, then we can help each other. Others say, we've got this great sort of idea and this pedagogical approach, and we figured out how to evaluate it. This is a platform and a space we want to share that. So the partnerships are internal. We've done that at Georgia State, internal partnerships and external partnerships. Now, the Atlanta Global Studies Center is a joint venture between Georgia State and Georgia Tech, but really, we're a national resource center. We're funded by the Department of Education. It's a Title VI center. Our job is to be here for you, for colleagues who want to engage and do this work. So we're looking at mechanisms to support and grow this community. And literally last night, I got an email from my colleague, John Rubin, who was the sort of founder of COIL, of Collaborative Online International Learning, who's developed a service called COIL Connect, which allows for this community of practice to expand and this network to grow. So we'll add that to the resources. I got it after we finished our slides, so that's really hot off the presses. But another great opportunity to do that collaborating, to build that community of practice, to help carry each other, and do this sort of support and development that's necessary. Next slide, please. The formats for virtual exchange are quite varied. I mean, you can take any kind of content. It could be creating a piece of music. It could be production. It could be developing films. My colleague, John Rubin, started with sort of cross-cultural film production. It can be embedded in a course, or it can be a little more sort of co-curricular. So the course embedded versions are, I think, the most common, and that they kind of plug into our structures. But essentially, that is two professors from different countries bring in some virtual intercultural global dimension into their course. The students, come together, they work together on some aspect of the class. Now, this can be in a particular subject, or it can cross-disciplinary in subject boundaries. It can be, topic focused. So for instance, a topic like, global health is huge. You can take that from a number of different disciplines. So the real thing, the only limitation here is the will of the faculty members to really figure out how to put it together and make it meaningful. But like I said, it's fun. Like, how many times do we get to do stuff that's really this much fun? You work across those disciplines, you design sort of, the experiences, and you have flexibility of formats. It can be, as little as a quick module, in a class or two, or over the course of a week. Or it can be something that, spans the whole of a semester, and anything in between. It can be something that, you develop and then build upon, and it can be multiple partners. There's no rule that says you have to have one faculty from one country and another. It can be, multiple nations, and it can really be, whatever we make it. So I do want to stress the sort of open and rich sort of range of possibilities it involves. And I want to say, something, next slide, please, that gives us sort of an example. I'll give, two examples. I gave my earlier example in the psychology and politics of terrorism class, where I came from the psychology perspective. My partner came from a political science perspective. We had students from all different disciplines in there. Here's an example. So our colleague Murad Dakhli has done great work. He's in the Robinson College of Business at Georgia State University and has been a long practitioner of virtual exchange, even before it was kind of cool and we knew what to call it. He's been really working in this in his international business classes. He's worked with ESCA, a university in Morocco, and our colleague Rehab Abba. They've developed really great sort of examples, case studies, practices. And one that really stands out is how stereotypes are conveyed, in cultural stereotypes in media and movies and film. They include peer assessment. And one of the things that we've been working towards and collaborating on with this group is to try to really bring in additional, innovation case studies. So I think there's a great example of, like, once you're in this space, once you develop those partnerships, it really becomes something that you can then build on and grow and get additional, the professional benefits accrue, because now you've got more collaboration. Your students are getting better experiences. You're finding more ways to engage and to innovate. And Murad, I think, is one of our shining stars at Georgia State who does this work. So next slide, please. So how do I start? This is where we're going to sort of get into some of the details. I'm going to pass over to my colleague Nanette. But the kind of guiding ethos, I would say, is do what you can where you are with what you have, right? This is what's, I think, compelling. All of us have been now able to work in online formats and contexts. We've got platforms to work with. We've had to improvise. We've had to innovate. Let's not let that investment, not be maximized. So we a lot of what we need, we've got. We've already kind of built around. Now, the other pieces of this is where you think about what partners do we have? What networks do we have? What kinds of ideas for classes, and where we start is kind of determined by that. The collaboration is key. I want to stress that point again here, that's the thing that is going to help really make this connect, because what this, the success of this really lives or dies on the basis of the quality and the strength of those connections and collaborations. So building, nurturing, supporting those comes, really as a key piece of this. And then the other part is sometimes there are opportunities for additional, support or professional development support or funding. Through the Atlanta Global Studies Center, we're trying to identify and create more of those opportunities. But there are also a lot of things you can do that don't require funding per se. What they do require is some time and effort, which is important. But I think this is something that we'd love to really, as we build out and really try to catalyze this community of practice, to support. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nanette. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Tony. Hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here today. And we'd like to, again, emphasize collaboration is the key. We think that is so important. And I just want to start by sharing with you ways that we've collaborated on our campus, and hope that may be something you'd consider that might work for you. So I'm in the Office of International Initiatives, and we have worked very closely with the Atlanta Global Studies Center. And I think that collaboration has really allowed us to achieve far more than we would have if we were operating without connecting, if we were trying to isolate and just do our own thing. So that has been a wonderful collaboration. I don't know if you can look on your campuses and see other areas of your culture that are involved in globalization and internationalization, and reach out to them and see in what ways can you pool resources, talents, or interests. We also, I think, very importantly, Tony mentioned Murad Dakil, for instance. We have several faculty members who are like that have all along been very interested in international work, have infused their courses with that kind of perspective, and just believe in that type of work. It's a value of theirs. And we started calling them our virtual exchange champions, because they were a group of people that we could turn to when we needed help, get contacts to identify partners, and they were just always there, ready to share their time and their expertise, because they really believe in this kind of work. So I'm really certain that probably on every campus there is that type of group. And I think bringing them together and collaborating with them and supporting them is really worth the effort. And then it's just starts to mushroom, and it builds this energy and talent, and identifies the talent, and people get excited. So hope you'll think about that. We also work closely with our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. And I hope that you have that resource on your campus where you can turn to them for instructional innovation, instructional technology. So that's been an excellent resource that has really helped us accomplish a lot of things. And in addition, we've also been able to work with our institutional effectiveness to engage in ongoing assessment. Next slide, please. So I want to start first with talking about funded activities. And while I'm aware that that's not the case for every situation, we want to share with you some of the things we have been able to do with funding on campus. We found it very effective to have call for proposals from our faculty. We've collaborated, OII has collaborated with AGSC. And we just sent out our third call for proposals, inviting faculty to engage in virtual exchange. And we've had a good response every time, and it is growing virtual exchange on campus, and it's certainly increasing awareness. We are able to offer to our faculty a professional development stipend, and we've been doing this at different levels. Our most recent call, we're offering $1,000 in a professional development stipend for implementing virtual exchange if the faculty will engage in what we're calling designing virtual exchange workshop. Then they would receive an additional $500. And if they are a faculty member teaching a class with large enrollment, which we're defining currently as 75 seats or over, then we have offered them the funds to hire a graduate teaching assistant. We're very interested in implementing virtual exchange in what we're calling large enrollment classes as a vehicle for us to offer an international learning experience for a larger group of students. And we're finding the faculty have just been wonderful. It is challenging to run 35 different groups in a class with 150 US students, and then you're bringing in, 150 international students, but faculty never cease to amaze me with their talent and enthusiasm. So we are finding this is working and very effective, and the students love it. Faculty are enjoying it. And this way we're able to reach a larger group of students. And we're going to hopefully be able to expand support through Atlanta Global Studies Center. Tony, do you want to jump in? I think you just mentioned that possibility, but I'll let you address that.
Yeah, I think, this is something, as we see this area get more traction and interest and success, as we're sort of thinking about contributions the Atlanta Global Studies Center can make, going forward, this is one area that we'd really, like to consider how we can expand on. And certainly in the context of offering training and providing the learning community support and the sort of community of practice, which I think is really, probably the most important piece. So this is something that's sort of an actively and growing area of focus.
Next slide, please. Now on to the non-funded activities. As some people, we really want to embrace everything we can to offer international experiences to our students. And we just wanted to share with you some of the things we've done at Georgia State that we found to be very successful, especially with building awareness and excitement and enthusiasm over all the benefits of international experiences. So one thing we've done is create a faculty teaching and learning community on virtual exchange. And this is Atlanta Global Studies Center supports this, and we have benefited so greatly. We have these meetings monthly, and they've really been well attended. We've been bringing in new faculty every meeting. They hear about it, they come, and you can come in and out, and it's just been great because faculty share experiences, resources. techniques and tips. And we always have a speaker that talks about their particular virtual exchange project, and it sparks ideas. And it really has been, to use Tony's word, fun. And it's just a good group, and we always have a spirited conversation around virtual exchange. So, and that would be something, it would take time, but I think it would be great to get started. And we found that to be very beneficial. We also have created an iCollege course that we use to put all our materials, everything we've learned, we're putting it in one place so faculty can access it. And we're also in the process of creating a virtual faculty training guide or handbook. Next slide, please. Additionally, I've already mentioned how identifying the VE champions has worked out so well for us. And the reason that has been effective is I really believe, as a faculty member myself, I know the limitations on your time and energy and all the expectations of faculty. So if you are doing this type of work, it's really important to get recognized. And we've been doing that in various ways that don't cost any money, but seem to mean a great deal to our faculty. We definitely put their recent projects, we highlight them and feature them on both the AGSC and the OII website with a picture and a description. And, that's an important thing. I also think that the faculty really appreciate a thank you. So the Associate Provost for International Initiatives and Tony will send a letter, a very detailed letter thanking the faculty member for their creativity, talking about their project and acknowledging their contribution to international education. And very importantly, we copy the deans and the chairs. So I think the faculty have really appreciated that. We also do certificates of completion that faculty can send out to the students, but we've also found that the faculty like sharing those certificates with their international partners. And it's, again, another form of recognition. And we're in the process of doing virtual exchange badges, and I'm looking forward to being able to offer that to students. Next slide, please. I had mentioned before our Learning and Technology Center, Learning and Teaching, Excellence in Learning and Teaching, and in online education. It's kind of a mouthful, but it's a wonderful resource. And I think it's important to be able to give faculty technology assistance. Some faculty, much less so now because of all of our transfer to online learning. But faculty can be a bit daunted by technology, and it really has so little to do with the success of a project. So being able to offer faculty that is really important, and to also let them know that there are experts in instructional design that will work with them. That's one of my roles as a coordinator of virtual exchange, is to help faculty design their project with good pedagogical techniques, and we can work together to do that if they so desire. And we also have offered webinars for faculty. And we did this in cooperation with our Excellence in Teaching and Learning Center. And I thought those were very well received, and it enabled us to get the word out to a large group of faculty. Next slide, please. So I just real briefly, because I think we're running out of time, but I wanted to be sure to mention how important assessment is. This is something, even though you might not have the support with it initially, I would really, really encourage you to engage in assessment of virtual exchange, so that, of course, data-driven decisions are what it's all about. But most importantly, you'll be able to share that data on the effectiveness of virtual exchange with campus stakeholders. So it really ongoing assessment to garner resources and support. Sometimes it's a little troubling because you have to do the work up front, but I really encourage you to do that. We found that that is making a difference on our campus. We have 3 different research projects that we've been involved in. All of them have gone very well and had really compelling results documenting that we can impact students' development of intercultural effectiveness skills through virtual exchange. And this is across disciplines and in large enrollment classes. We've also done a project that we're very exciting about, where we were able to document the impact of virtual exchange on indices of students' academic success. So I think there's not many studies out there that have accomplished that, and we're very excited about those results. Next slide, please. So this is just some of the information about how we documented virtual exchange impact on intercultural effectiveness. We used an instrument called Intercultural Effectiveness Scale, and we have found that to be a good measure with validity and reliability, and we were able to pinpoint areas that we saw a significant increase in with our students. Next slide, please. Just wanted to again mention about the indices of student success. This is some of the details of the study, but we were very excited because we found that that virtual exchange had a positive impact on academic success, particularly for undergraduate females, undergraduate Asians, and Pell eligible students. Most important about this study was that we have used a process called compensatory sampling, where we're comparing a group of non-VE students with similar characteristics we compare them to the students that had virtual exchange. So that addresses the issue of bias, that people are more successful because those students are likely to be engaged in that kind of thing. We looked at the indices of GPA at graduation, percentage of students who completed the degree, and time to degree completion. And we examined those by sex, race, and ethnicity. And really, I think what's most important about this study is that it really represents a model that you can use to document virtual exchange and its impact on academic success, and then do this every year as you go forward. And then it will inform areas that you might want to focus on, populations that you might want to focus on. And it really does, give you a justification for expansion of virtual exchange programs. So I think that's it. Next slide, please. Yes. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk with you, and I look forward to the breakouts.
Thank you, Nanette, Tony, and Eric. Since you're attending today, we know that you're interested in internationalizing the curriculum. So we're going to do breakout rooms, and we have these suggested topics for you to discuss in your breakout room. We're just going to do 10 minutes. So we'll come back at 12:40 and we can share as a group, and then we'll take questions and provide some more resources. So Jonathan, if you want to go ahead and do the breakout rooms, I think we're ready.